Okay, thank you very much, Tara. And I really appreciate you setting this up for us and for me to be able to present to you tonight. Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Randi Brown. I am a school psychologist, school neuropsychologist, retired. And my purpose for meeting with you tonight is to talk to you about preparing for college with mental health in mind. I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about myself. I am a retired employee, like I just said, from public education as a school psychologist. I served 33 years in public education, and I spent my last 26 years in Briarcliff Manor. I was the high school psychologist for several years, and then the last 10 years I was there, I spent most of my time district-wide. So not only did I work with the high school children, I worked with the elementary and the middle school children as well. Part of my duties in Briarcliff was to serve as a chairperson. So I was the CPSE chairperson in another district. I served as the Committee on Special Ed chairperson and Section 504 chairperson for several years, pretty much over a decade. I've also had the pleasure of being an adjunct professor at two institutions. The first one is at the University of Phoenix, where I was able to teach undergraduate and graduate classes in psychology for 3 years. And as part of the Pace University Graduate School of Education, I taught an assessment class for a couple of semesters in Pleasantville, New York. After my retirement, I knew I wasn't done working, and I've always enjoyed working with kids and how I can help and providing, you know, all of the knowledge I acquired over the years. So I, as part of some of the duties that I had working, I transitioned that into my own business, and I'm an executive functioning and academic coach. And I also am a parent trainer. And what I mean by that is that if parents have questions about maybe discipline and you know, how to communicate with their children or things like that, I kind of give, you know, coaching to that and consultation. And I have my own business. It's called Comprehensive Academic Coaching Solutions. And the last piece of information, the most important probably, is that I am an empty nester, but I have raised and launched 2 children, both of whom are watching me this evening. They're one of our guests tonight, so I'm very happy that they're here for me. So let's get down to it. We're going to talk about mental health considerations tonight. I didn't want to provide a presentation that was full of statistics and one in which I provided a lot of data that all of you can find on the internet yourself. My goal is to give you an idea of the college process with mental health considerations. What should you expect, what you should watch out for, and what you can do. So my goal is to give you some really practical strategies, a lot of tips, things to keep in mind as you go through the process or send your children off to school. I was thinking that it would be a good idea to also address this in 3 different ways. I'm going to start my presentation just touching upon the kids that are getting ready to go into senior year, those that are about to start the college process and what they might look for in some of the schools that they want to attend. Then I'm going to roll that right into kids that are just graduating. You know, we have a lot of graduations coming up and some that are graduating now and that they're going to be going to college. So I wanted to roll that into the second part. And the third part is parental involvement. You know, I definitely recognize how important that is, and it's actually critical. I feel it's essential, and I'm going to talk about communicating with your college-bound child and boundaries so that everybody is happy and everybody's okay. So what I think I wanted to do is start with some important things to remember. That the college process, it's not just about the student going away. It's about transition for the whole family. Everybody is transitioning. It's not the fact that your children are going to a new school. Your whole family dynamic is going to change. And that's okay. And I think a lot of times, which is my second point, a lot of times I think some of the angst and some of the worry comes from the unknown. And I want you to know that that's normal. A lot of the things that you might be worrying about as kids go off to school, or kids maybe stay at home and go to school, or kids go into the workforce, it's the unknown. And that's okay. You have to know that everybody's experiencing it just like you. And that brings me to my third point. There are going to be a lot of emotions going on at different times with different people. And while it seems like you're only, at times you may feel like you're the only one experiencing it, I want you to know that you're not. If you have any questions, by the way, as I present, please feel free to put them in the chat. I neglected to mention that earlier. And once I finish the presentation, I'll be more than happy to take questions. So we're looking at the kids now that are about to start the process of applying to schools. In terms of mental health factors, it's important to look at the things that will be important to look at the school that's right for you. For example, you want to look at the counseling services at the school. You want to see what do they offer? Do they offer individual counseling, group counseling? Do they offer certain activities that they'll do? You want to check out what they do in terms of setting appointments. Do they have a waiting list? I have found and I have heard over time that counseling offices can be very busy, especially during certain times of the year. And sometimes it's hard to get an appointment. So it's important to know ahead of time what their traffic is like. And you also want to know if they have after hours or emergency services available.
It's just talking about like when kids go to college, some tips.
Not more specific.
Someone has their microphone on? I'm sorry. And the second point that I want to point out is health and wellness programs. You want to look at colleges that offer all kinds of programs that are mental health related, like stress management workshops, mindfulness, fitness classes, recreational opportunities. Does the school have a gym? And what does the gym look like? Because using your body and exercising is a great way to beat stress. And it's a great way to stay healthy. And, a holistic approach to wellness can support, your mental health concerns. And another thing you might want to look at, especially if your child has anxiety or tends to worry and things along that nature, is you want to see if the schools offer housing options. And sometimes there's supportive housing where they'll offer places that are dorms that might be more quiet. They have quieter communities, they're study communities. A lot of times kids are asked if they can bring an emotional pet to school. My best friend's daughter actually had an issue and she needed to bring she got permission, but she needed to bring her cat to school with her. So the school was very willing to work with her with that. So, if that ends up being a consideration, that's something that you might want to look at before you even start looking at the academic piece of it. So what I think is really important too is that students, I don't know if there are any students online right now, but when kids are thinking about their own happiness and what do they want in terms of colleges, I think there are two very different pieces of information that I think it's important that they pay attention to. The first one is, I think kids need to know their personality. I think they need to have an idea of whether they want to be on a big campus or in a smaller setting. And I think that one in particular takes a lot of introspection, because some kids get taken away with what they might see in the movies and on TV and the big games and things like that. But do they really want to be on a large campus? Sometimes a smaller setting is better. Another factor that kids might want to pay attention to is how attached are you to your family, in the sense of how far away do you want to go from home? You know, some children are explorers and they want to go across the country, and others, they just want to stay nearby. You know, you can have a radius. What I did with my kids is we discussed it and we came up with a 3-hour radius. And actually one went 3 hours one way and one went 3 hours another way, but we kept within that radius. And, you know, in terms of personality, as a person, you want to know, how do you handle change? There's going to be a lot of change that goes on in the next 12 months between applying to schools, going through the process of waiting to see where you're accepted or not, and then figuring out your next steps and all the other academic things, which we're not going to address in this presentation, but more so about your major and things like that. There's a lot going on. So I think it's really important to know who you are in terms of, you know, how do you deal with things? Are you a go with the flow type of person, or are you somebody that overthinks and worries? And whichever type of student you are, I think it's really important to have a good understanding of that so that you know how you'll react to change. The second one is to know yourself as a student. And that's an important piece as well. Do you need help keeping on track with assignments? As a student, do you need a quiet place to work, or are you okay with background noise? Dorms tend to be noisy. There are private places to study. Of course, in the dorms, they have conference rooms and things along that nature, but you can't be guaranteed. So if you prefer a quieter place, that might go back to the housing piece, which was on the other slide, about maybe you want to ask the school about that. Do you have time management skills that will help you plan projects, get to class on time, being able to manage the workload that college will present itself? Would having an adult help you during the school year? Would that be helpful to you? You know, you want to look for supports and resources, not just the mental health type as in the counseling centers, but you want to see what other kind of services are offered. Some schools offer, I don't know if I'd call them tutoring sites, but you can go and get extra help in certain buildings and things like that. Just one of the services that I provide in my business is I go to school with kids. I college coach. So what that means is that I would meet with a student in college once a week at a mutual agreed upon time, and we would do that together. We would look at projects, deadlines, dates. I'd help them space things out, things along that nature. And sometimes kids need that individualized approach. And kids also need to realize that their learning then it really becomes their responsibility. You know, when you're in high school, it's pretty much laid out for you during the day. And I think what kids don't get, and I think they get overwhelmed with, is the fact that if they're taking 15 credits in school, that's 15 hours of class time a week. The rest of the time is their responsibility. And what are they going to do during that time frame? So these are all, I think, really important parts to really keep in mind as you're starting to look for colleges in the fall and where you might end up going to school next year, the following year. I wanted to also show you that students and parents essentially have the same basic concerns and apprehensions about college, but they just think about them in different ways. So I'm kind of going to go across the page because they're all the same, but I want to show you the different ways that students versus parents think about things. So in terms of academic performance, students worry whether they'll be able to handle the workload, and they have to adapt to the higher expectations of college. Parents, with regard to academic success, they worry whether their children will be able to handle the course load and adjust to the rigors of college. In terms of financial strain, students are concerned about the cost of their education and how will they afford it without accumulating debt, and some may need a job. While parents also worry about the college cost, but can they do that without loans? And will their children be able to have financial responsibility? Socially, kids are worried about making friends and fitting in and getting along with their roommates. And, if they're moving away from home the first time, that's also a social adjustment. Parents are also worried about the same thing. And, it's just building a supportive and safe social network as well. So as I'm going through these, I'm hoping you're seeing that they're still the same concerns. They're just a little different in terms of how a parent might view it and how a child might view it. In terms of safety on campus, students are concerned about their safety on campus with crime rates and the college environment. Same thing, the parents, worry about the safety and concerns. Peer pressure and identity, that kids worry about peer pressure and fitting in, and doing things maybe that their peers are encouraging them to do. Parents are also worried about the influence of the peers in terms of negative behaviors that they may, see on, that their kids might be exposed to, substance abuse, risky activities, and things like that. In terms of independence and responsibility, students are concerned about managing their independence, budgeting their time, and taking care of their own well-being. Parents are worried whether their children will be able to handle the responsibilities of independent living, including managing their finances, making responsible decisions, and advocating for themselves. Students worry about career readiness, while parents worry about career preparation. With regard to readiness, students worry whether their college education will adequately prepare them for their future, including gaining relevant skills, while parents want their children to succeed professionally, and they worry if college will adequately prepare them for their futures. And in terms of mental health, the pressures of academic and social life can take a toll on students' well-being, which can cause the stress and anxiety and possibly depression, and how to seek support if needed. And parents are concerned about the same things, and they want to make sure that their children are able to get the services that they need if they need those. Additional concerns for each group. In terms of students, they have to contend with homesickness. Sometimes leaving home for the first time can be very difficult. Kids can feel lonely, they can feel disconnected. All of a sudden they don't have their friends with them from high school. They're all by themselves, and it brings along a lot of extra feelings like that. In terms of academic direction, many students are unsure about their academic and career paths, and they worry about finding the right major. Some kids also worry that they'll be able to adjust to college life. They have to navigate the complexities of it, and they have to understand, rules and things along that nature, and policies and procedures. And kids have to also worry about balancing work and life, learning how to balance academic responsibilities with jobs and extracurriculars. Parents, on the other hand, worry about more so than their children, but they worry about the health and wellness. They want to make sure their kids are eating enough, sleeping well, exercising regularly, and that if they need medical care, they seek it out. Parents worry about time management. Will their children be able to manage their time effectively? And again, balance their responsibilities. Could be a job, could be the social life. Parents are also concerned about substance use and abuse. They worry about experimentation with drugs, alcohol, or other substances, which could potentially affect, their health, safety, and academic performance. And they also worry about communication. Parents want the open and effective communication with their children, and they want to stay informed. And I think that they worry that now that their children won't be in the home where they can keep an eye on their kids, will that still be an issue? So what am I suggesting before your children leave for school? So my thoughts are this. If your child right now has any therapeutic concerns, meaning are they in counseling right now? Do they have any medical management, things along that nature? It's wise to not only consider college services, but it might be a good idea to explore independent outside providers in the surrounding community as either a backup or in lieu of what's available on campus. If, in my earlier slide, when I talked about the counseling services, if you happen to get to a school and the school says, well, we have a large waiting list, it's going to take about a week and a half until we can see your child. It might be a good idea ahead of time if you can connect with some independent evaluators in the area, or, look at telehealth. That's another option, as long as it's on your insurance and that's a viable option. It might be worth it to just have those names in mind. If your child has any kind of services through an IEP or Section 504 plan, it's important to contact the Disability Services Office. If there are mental health conditions, you want to make sure that the school can provide for those. Ensure that the school has policies and procedures in place. Most do. Section 504 is a federal law. It's part of a federal law of the Americans with Disabilities Act. So in some form or fashion, they have to have some form of support available for kids. Another idea I would provide for students is I would suggest that they connect with incoming freshmen through social media. You can often there'll be pages for the school that you're going to go to, for the school that the child's going to go to, like on Facebook. There's Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat, whatever social media that you use. I know that on Facebook, I'm not sure it happens now, but I know it did when my kids went to school, that they each joined their respective school's Facebook page. And on there, they were able to find roommates. Kids talk about what they're looking for. Even though schools do their diligence about helping match up the right people, sometimes if you're in a Facebook group, you might be able to find that roommate right then and there. And that's an interesting thing. So it's important to, you can get to meet some of the people even before you get there. It's also a good idea to look at the kinds of clubs the campus offers and look at programming that has to do with mental health education and advocacy. I'm pretty sure at this point there would be programs and such where kids can participate and find those sources if they need them. And another thing is to make sure that, the workload can be harder than high school. So it's important for you to really understand that you are going in with the services that you need and the preparation that you need. So if you know that you need to study a lot, it's going to be important for you to keep that in mind as you start getting acclimated to your college environment. You can enlist adults to help you with that. You can also know that feeling overwhelmed during your transition with workload and managing your time and stuff can be, something that could happen, feeling overwhelmed, and it's important to get help for that. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the power of hello. And it's one little word, and it has a ton of power. I call it the ultimate icebreaker. What it is essentially just going up to somebody on campus and saying hello. And I can tell you, I used it firsthand when I went to school. When I was about to go to college, my grandmother had told me, when you get on campus, it's important that you talk to people. And I, of course, didn't know anybody. And I would say, well, what do you suggest I do to start talking to people that I don't know? And she said, just say hello. I think adults just say hello. I mean, it's such a powerful word to get to know somebody. And I actually took her advice. I remember getting on campus for freshman orientation. I didn't know a soul, and there were at least 1,000 kids with me. And there was a girl standing right next to me. And I thought in my head, I said, I should do it. And then I said, no. And then I said, yes. But I ended up doing it. And I said, hello to the girl next to me. And she almost seemed relieved that I did that. And she said, hi. And I asked her a little bit, hi, how are you doing? Where are you from? And it turns out we were from neighboring towns. And we just started talking to each other. And she ended up being my best friend for my first 2 years of college. And it all started from hello. So if you don't know what to do when you're on campus, if you don't know what to do when you walk into a classroom and you sit down in a lecture hall and class is about to begin and you're feeling a little lonely or you're feeling unsure, just turn to the next person and say hello. I mean, that actually, is a good thing. You could also use other questions such as, where are you from? What dorm are you in? Or what's your major? I also want to encourage you to go to as many activities, especially freshman orientation, as you can. Do not isolate yourself, because if you start to withdraw, you're taking opportunity away for you to get used to your new environment. And remember that everyone is feeling the same way, especially in freshman orientation. It's really important to know that unless somebody went to school with one of their friends, everybody's in the same shoes that you are. So just say hello. So I have some proactive steps for students to consider while they transition into college. I think in terms of academics, students should recognize that the shift from high school to college brings a significant increase in the academic rigor and independence. Give yourself the chance to adapt to self-directed learning and managing a heavier workload. Self-directed meaning what I was referring to before. If you're only taking 5 classes and each one is worth 3 credits, you have to direct yourself. No one's going to tell you what to do with the rest of the hours of your week. No one's going to tell you when to do your homework or to hand in that paper or to watch to make sure that you're on track. It becomes a self-directed experience. In terms of social adjustment, give yourself a chance to build new friendships, to find a sense of belonging within the college community. Look at extracurriculars. You can always join and drop out if that's the case. But if you go and you take the chance, you'll never know if you don't do that. Time management. Understand now, all of a sudden, you are in charge of your own schedule. You're going to need to know how to balance your time, how to manage your time. And you're going to have to be able to do that in a way where you don't feel overwhelmed. Understand that you may experience homesickness, and that's okay. It's okay to cope with it as well, but it's really important for you to talk to your parents about it. Stress management. Understand the pressure of academic demands and social adjustments, and that you could get more stressed about it. It's really important for you to identify and manage stress for your well-being. And identity exploration. College is a time for self-discovery. You may learn all kinds of things about yourself that you didn't know before. Some question with identity and their purpose and personal values. Now, this is a special little note for kids about calling your parents. The tendency when students go away to school is to get immersed in their experience, and they don't necessarily want to spend as much time communicating with their parents. Again, that's not a hard and fast rule, but it's something that I've heard over time that kids, they want to live their college experience, and they don't necessarily want to hear from their parents that much. But you have to understand that your parents are going through a transition as well. They are adjusting to a new life, just like you're experiencing a new life. Your parents will worry about you, and they'll never stop worrying about you. So that you have to understand too. Parents will ask you questions, and they're doing that because they're not involved in your day-to-day life. They ask questions because they want to know how you're doing. If you're making friends, are you eating and sleeping enough? These are typical questions that they wouldn't necessarily be asking you if you were still in the home. So that's why they ask. And this is a very important part too. I don't want you to feel badly or let other peers negatively influence you if you want to call your parents. And I don't want them to make you feel bad about wanting to talk to your parents. I think communicating with your parents is really, really important. And if someone were to dare say to you, why are you calling your parents? You're away at school and they're home. Why do you care? I think it's okay to flip the table on them and say, why? You don't call your parents? I have a great relationship with my parents, or I want to let my parents know what's going on. Maybe you should call yours. I think if you turn the tables, then all of a sudden they start second guessing their actions, and then they'll stop looking at what you're doing. So I want students to understand the importance of talking with your parents while you're away at school. Now, in terms of steps for parents to consider during the college transition, it's okay for you to express your concerns in terms of open communication. Try to be supportive and non-judgmental. Let them know that you are there to listen and help them through changes. Stay connected with your kids by maintaining regular contact, whether it's through phone calls or texts or video chats. Check in on them and offer your support and guidance. Encourage help-seeking behaviors is an important one, because if you feel that your children are struggling with their mental health, remind them about the services that they may forget exist, such as the counseling center. If you prearrange to talk to a therapist or a doctor outside of the campus, you can say, oh, remember, we set up Dr. So-and-so or Mrs. So-and-so to talk to. Why don't you give them a call and see if you can talk to them? It's important to encourage your kids to help give them the lead, if they can, to get that extra support, because what you're doing in the process is you're teaching them to take care of themselves. When your children are home, you want to foster a supportive environment. You want to create an environment where they feel comfortable, where they can express themselves and seek help when needed. Encourage them while they're home to try and use coping mechanisms that are healthy, such as exercise, relaxation techniques, and hobbies. Not the phone, but hobbies, things they can actually do. As parents, you may want to stay informed and educate yourself about the signs and symptoms of common mental health issues, such as anxiety, depression, and substance abuse. It's helpful if you have an idea about that stuff. If you don't now, and knowing how to address that ahead of time, when you talk to your kids, you can kind of vet out what's going on. If there are some concerns that they're expressing to you, maybe because of the knowledge you've acquired, you're going to be able to pick up on that, and maybe the red flag will go off sooner than if you didn't know what might be associated with certain feelings and things like that. You want to reach out to the college counseling center if you have concern about your child's health. Now, schools work differently, colleges work differently in terms of what they can let you know. In terms of college, you may not be able to find out anything, but it's still important for you to communicate with them and to work with the staff there if there happens to be an issue. And in terms of parental involvement and communication, see what the college, as I just alluded to, see what the college will allow you to do. A lot of colleges will ask students to sign forms that say it's okay for them to talk to your parents. So that's important. If they do offer that as an option, I would, try to see if you can get that done. Now, I wanted to have this slide for parents when you're communicating and talking to your children. So not only are you adjusting to a new home and new environment without your child present, and again, I'm talking about the situation where your child is going away to school, obviously, you want to realize, and sometimes it's hard, but you want to recognize that they're going to they're adjusting to new circumstances as well. Be aware that your children may handle transition differently than they have handled other situations to date. especially if they're living away. Your child might have emotional challenges that weren't there before. And maybe at school, with the new academic demands, they might provide new issues or concerns, especially might be over grades. Understand that when a child goes away to school and they're making new friends and starting new things, it's a hard pill to swallow, but your children may not have as much time to connect with you as you may like. If I would also suggest, it's a strategy I've used, where if you keep questions to a minimum, because if you know, are you eating? Are you sleeping? Are you this? And those are natural questions. But if you don't temper that with some of, or balance it with other information, all your child is going to think is that when you, oh, my parents are calling and all they want to know is, am I eating? Am I sleeping? Am I this? No, what you want to do is you want to give them an idea of what your life is like. What are you doing? Hey, you know, work is okay. The neighbor's dog, you know, finally learned how to jump through a hoop, you know, something like that. Anything that you can share with your child that lets them know on your end that you're doing okay. I think it becomes more of a give and take. And I think your children will be more apt to share information with you. And remember that it's, while you want to keep the open lines of communication, remember to have patience as they try to establish their independence. At times it can be difficult. You know, balance your guidance with their journey to go into independence. So I came up with the plan. And what I mean by the plan is, I think it's something that needs to be before kids go to school, how to communicate with each other. You can call it the communication plan. You can call it whatever you desire. But the plan should be created by and agreed to by you and your child. And what I mean for this is in terms of communication, because you want to make sure they're okay. And they want to make sure that they're communicating with you enough. So some of the things that I would put in this agreement or this plan would be, how many times you discuss together, how many times per week will you communicate with each other? And how will you do that? Will it be a phone call? Will it be a text? Will it be something? Some families, I've recommended that they give the thumbs up. You know, like if you send your child a thumbs up at 11 o'clock and they send you one, even if it's 2 or 3 in the afternoon, a once a day thumbs up lets you know that things are okay. At least they're responding to you. And I think a once a week video check-in would be okay. And I think it's appropriate. And of course, I'm not talking about the in-between phone calls and texts and this and that. But if your child isn't so keen on communicating, this is at least a good way to start. Say, you know what, I understand that you're going to school and I understand you want your independence, but we need some sense of knowing that you're okay and things are going, according to your plan, where you're going to school, you're doing well with your studies, et cetera, et cetera. And what I think is also important is, again, it's being proactive. If there's a concern, I think it's important to decide ahead of time what should be done. For example, if you have a concern that your child is getting depressed or they're isolating themselves and they don't seem to feel like you don't feel that they're coming out of it, what is the plan? Is the plan to do more frequent check-ins with them? Is the plan for you to go up to school and see that they're physically okay, physically go up and see if they're okay? Should they be coming home for a break? Should you be calling the counseling center? I think a lot of this would be helpful if you can do this, ahead of time, so that you're able to figure out, not in the moment, but figure this out ahead of time. And it actually helps you from not getting overwhelmed about what should we do? What should we do? So I have some last minute thoughts. So mental health is just as important, if not more so, than your physical health. I think it's important for kids to be aware how they feel. recognize if they struggle, and that it's okay to ask for help. And I wanted to just touch upon one last thing about, a transfer. If you're going to transfer out, if for whatever reason a child is not happy at their school and they're sure it's the wrong fit, it's important for the kids to know that it's okay and that there are solutions for that. For example, they can transfer to another college. They can come home and go to community college until they're either ready to move forward, or maybe they want to come home, or they're unhappy because they don't know what to do and they think taking classes is just not the thing that they should be doing right now, but they need to figure out what they want to do with their lives. And if it ends, and again, I'm talking at the extreme, a lot of this can be dealt with at school, et cetera. But if it's really not a good fit, sometimes that's the action that you should take. But you have to realize that if either of those two options, you transferring to another school or community college, if those come through, the kids need to understand that they are not failures, and college is not a failure, and your children did not fail you. It's not a bad thing to transfer if it's not the right fit. The mental wellness is what's important. And trust me, you're going to want to have the happy kids instead of forcing them to stay in a school that just isn't their place, and they know it's not their place. So based upon all of that, I mean, I think I've given some practical solutions and some strategies for you. I'm always happy to answer questions and for you to contact me. If you have any, if you'd like to talk further about your kids, I have the QR code, which brings you right to my site where I have all of my services and my contact information. And that's what I have. Tara, do you have questions?
I don't see any yet, but we can invite people to either type it in or put a hand up.
Okay. So if anybody has a question, whatever you'd like to do, I'd be more than happy to answer a question for you.
And people tend to be a bit shy at first.
Okay. There always has to be one to start the ball rolling. And if you don't feel comfortable in this environment, my contact information's on the screen. You can feel free to reach out to me, on your own. And I can talk to you at that point as well. I think is there somebody in the chat?
Yeah. There's something called a W curve. That's what they put in. So have you ever heard of a W curve?
No, I don't know what that is.
Maybe she could tell us in what context or where she heard it.
Yeah.
Okay, here's another one. Do you
Okay.
have any advice for students going back to school after a gap year?
Yes, a lot of I would definitely talk to your child about what their concerns might be. I mean, a lot of the things that might be on their mind are found in this presentation. I'm thinking off the top of my head, your child might feel that they need to explain why they had a gap year. It's just something that I can think of, like if they went to school and they're meeting somebody for the first time and your child says, oh yeah, well, I took a gap year. And the other person they're talking to might say, oh, why did you take the gap year? So I would come up with a a standard cookie cutter answer to that question. Why did you take the gap year? And it can be anything, it could be whatever the reason is, but I would use that in every situation. So why did you take a gap year? I felt I needed to explore a couple of things, and I worked with my parents on that, and they were cool, and they gave me the chance to take the gap year, and now here I am, and I'm back, and I'm ready to go to school or something along that nature. But I think it's important to have an idea, for them to voice to you if they have any concerns of their own about going back to school.
Okay, there's another one. My
Okay.
child has trouble getting out of bed in the morning and can sleep through multiple alarms. Any strategies, suggestions?
For living away at school, I'm assuming. Would
I
that
would
be-
guess so. I mean, my son's a bit like that too, and it was something I did worry about.
Okay. Well, the first thing it sounds like your child likes to sleep late. So my first instinct would be to recommend that your child sign up for a late afternoon or evening classes. That would be my first instinct. A lot of times classes are not just offered in the daytime. They're offered later on in the day. Again, if there's a freshman class that's offered at a certain time, then that's something else to work with. But some classes, keep in mind in college, some classes meet 3 times a week for an hour. If they're a 3-credit course, of course, twice a week for an hour and a half, or once a week for 3 hours. And oftentimes they're offered in the morning, in the afternoon, and evening. So that's my gut instinct is if your child sleeps late, take a later class so that they're awake and can attend and don't have that issue. If it's a morning class that they have to get to, that's a tricky one. I'd be curious to know what you do now to get them out of bed, to start. But yeah, that seems more of like an individualized kind of response to that question. But again, I would probably do the later classes.
Yep. My son actually asked his roommate to wake him up.
Okay.
That was
Okay.
the thing. So the W curve, Michelle's come back and said W curve is the emotional pattern of incoming students, cultural shock, then emotional adjustment, then mental isolation, finally acceptance and integration. So it's actually, it seems to me kind of a term for what you've been talking about.
Okay. I've never heard of that before, but I appreciate you sharing that. And yeah, it's again, if anything, it just validates that college transition it's never stagnant. It comes, it goes, it ebbs, it flows. Sometimes it's great, some days, and some days it's not. There's a lot of variation. I think I'd reflect back to the slide where I was talking about, if you're the child, know yourself, know your personality, know who you are. And if you can foresee some of these things coming your way, or if you deal with certain things in a certain way, it's best to think about how you're going to react to them should you find yourself in that situation.
Okay, let's see, there's another one. Do you think it's good for new students to be too busy with orientation and adjusting to contact parents? My sister-in-law complained about not hearing from her daughter for the first few weeks. So do you think it's bad to be too busy, or is it good?
Oh, I think 2 weeks or a few weeks is a very long time for a child not to be in touch with their parent. Again, it can come up with if your child is so into the busyness of if her child or her niece is very into school and the orientation and the classes and things like that, I think it's fair to say to her, we need to hear from you. Even if we don't talk directly to you, we need to agree on a way where you're going to let us know at least you're okay. And that can be, as I had mentioned, the thumbs up. That can be agreeing on the 15-minute video thing once a week to start, whatever's comfortable for the parents and the child, I think. It's some kids get so excited about going to school and they love everything about being on their own and making their own decisions. And I'm going to stay up till 1 o'clock every night because I can, kind of thing. And, it's a whole way of adjusting. But, again, I think a couple of weeks is a little too long. Actually, yeah, it's a little too long for parents not to be hearing from their children. And if that's the case, I would say, we need to talk to you. And you need to give us a time when we can speak on the phone, and then or video, even better, and say, listen, this is our concern. We understand you love college. We understand you're having a blast, and we understand that you're going to your classes and everything's great, but you need to communicate with us so that we don't worry. And a lot of the things that are in the presentation, they can say to their child, we worry about this, we worry about that, and we just need to know that you're okay. So let's come up with a system. Let's come up with the plan to see how we can make it better, and how we can be satisfied that we're hearing from you and hearing from you enough.
Okay, I don't see any new ones. I have a quick question is, are there any, a couple of things that would really raise alarm bells for you if a student, say, had something going on, like, I know one parent on Facebook noticed that their child hadn't been using their credit card at all and
Right.
had not been going to classes and had been flunking. So are there anything that you can think of that would really raise alarm bells for you?
Well, those raise alarm bells. I would also look at if they're communicating with you, if the parents' calls are going to voicemail, what is their tone on the phone? And that's why I think a video once a week is really important, so you can see your kids. You can't touch them, but you can see them, and you're going to be able to see if their demeanor has changed, if there's something going on, if they seem overwhelmed. The Zoom call or whatever mode you use is really essential, and it's critical. Yeah, and negative talk, oh, well, it's okay. And for a child who maybe was very vibrant in school, all of a sudden seems to have a personality change, and it doesn't seem like it's a phase, but it seems like more like their norm, their new norm. Yeah, those are all red flags.
Okay, great. So we just have a few people signing off and saying thank you for the great info and strategies. So if anyone has a last question, otherwise, Dr. Brown and I were talking that we're hoping to put together a program for the fall about sending children with special needs off to college. So keep an eye out for that if anyone might be interested in that one. And if you're interested in the recording, or you think it would help anybody we will be posting this in the next few days for a 2-week time period on our Somers Library YouTube. So, a new message. Let's see what that says. Oh, it just says thank you. So
Okay.
I think everyone is they're heading off for dinner. So
Okay, great.
So I'd like to thank Randi Brown. And it was a great program.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Okay, everyone have a lovely evening.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.